One of the first pedals that you can get on the market in the 60s, besides the wah pedal, was the fuzz pedal. Now, there's a number of them that became very famous. The most famous one is the fuzz face. The other one is the Maestro fuzz tone that's made its big fame and is placed in history on Satisfaction from the Stones. That's a fuzz pedal right there. Also, Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck used to use what they call was a tone bender by a company called Sola Sound. But I'd say the most famous one is the fuzz face, made famous by Jimi Hendrix. And if we take a look at this pedal right here, we see the fuzz face. Now, this struck me years later. Why do they call it a fuzz face? It looks like a face. So for me, that was one of those kind of things that one day I was like, ooh, there you go. All right, so it is a very simple pedal, but very finicky, and I find to be one of the more difficult pedals to use, and not a pedal for kids. What I mean by that is it takes a little bit of getting used to, and they can be really finicky with amps and volume and how you set them. Now, there's basically two kinds of fuzz circuits. There's something called a silicone fuzz, which this is, and there's a germanium fuzz. Now, a germanium transistor came out, those were the transistors used before silicone. The problem with germanium transistors is, one, people thought they didn't produce enough gain, but they're also very temperature sensitive. So if the pedal got really warm, if it was a really warm club, they start to sound different. So that's a bit of a pain in the butt, right? Also, they're noisier. And also with the germanium stuff is they're very sensitive to like line buffers in front of them. So if you have a pedal, like a buffered pedal, say like a Boss pedal in front of your fuzz face, it's not going to sound so good. That's just the way the chip, the transistors inside it work. So it's something that we'll talk about when we talk later on about chaining effects. So it's something definitely keep in mind. If your fuzz isn't sounding right, it has to be in the right position in your pedal board, or else it's not going to sound so good. Okay, when we look back down here at the fuzz, it's very simple, volume and fuzz. Now, generally speaking, fuzzes sound great when you crank them. They also sound best into a slightly distorted amp. Right now I'm running into a clean amp, as we can hear. All right, so here's my fuzz all the way up. I'm going to turn the volume back a little bit. I'm going to put about noon here. So kick that in. As you can see, sometimes the volume drops. You really have to level that out. So there's your fuzz sound. The thing, if you crank that more, that volume, there we go. Like Sabbath-y kind of thing. Now, what you want to look for in a good fuzz is when you roll back your volume knob. Check it out. Right? That kind of Hendrix thing. Right? That's just rolling back my volume on the fuzz. Now, check it out. In a very short volume sweep, your fuzz kicks in full. So I'll show you. I'm back full fuzz. It's rolling up back down about 6 or 7. I got a cool sort of amp-like distortion. So a lot of times Hendrix kept the fuzz on, and you can hear it on some of the live concerts where he's playing rhythm guitar, and then suddenly you hear like this fuzz jump, and it's just he turned his volume up. So you find a sweet spot for your acoustic, or sorry, your rhythm sound. So like I said, fuzzes are a great effect, but I would not recommend them as your first pedal because they are very picky. At a low volume, they don't really sound that great. They're really, really, like I said, finicky to amplifiers. They're finicky about volume. If you get a germanium fuzz, they're finicky about temperature. So there's a lot of things to consider. Now, These old fuzz faces, this is a reissue of the original one, and it's pretty darn big, right? And even they tried to stay original. The input is on the opposite side, so it can be a bit of a pain with your pedal board. A lot of manufacturers, like Analog Man, who's a boutique manufacturer, if you open up the fuzz face, you realize it's a very simple circuit. There's really nothing in here. If you looked at the circuit board in here, it's like this big. It's like, right there. The rest is all just kind of cosmetic. So you can find a really great sounding fuzz in a very small box, but, it doesn't look as cool.